I couldn't get to the unmute button. Oh, Barry, I'm copying on from you now. I couldn't get to the unmute. Oh, my life. What an intro. Anyway, welcome all back to All for United WSC. We've got another game to talk about. Third in a week, because you can't get enough of United women at the moment. Hopefully, we can turn it around. But as always, we've decided to get an opposition fan on to give us the insight on and the lowdown from an Everton point of view. So, Fiona, welcome to the channel. Thanks for coming on and giving up your Friday afternoon to speak to the two of us about this game.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to having a little chat about our upcoming fixture.
Indeed, and Barry, as ever, thanks for coming on. This will be your third one in the week, right?
I'm just running the show now, and it's just me. It's not AF here anymore. It's Barry TV.
But there we are. Hello to everyone in the chat as well. I'll get all your comments up in a second, and we'll go through any questions, any discussion points. As you all know, you've all been here before. Get that in over the next kind of 40 minutes, an hour, however long this goes on for, as we discuss the upcoming game. I want to start, though. I want to come to Fiona. I want to come to you first, because we asked this question last week when we did Leicester, and I'm going to do this throughout the season now. I guess, how have you summed up Everton's season so far? Are you a happy fan at the moment? How are you in your current position?
I think I speak for myself and the rest of our supporters club and supporters in whole that we are quite happy with where we are this season. Of course, we've got new management. We've pretty much had a whole 50% of our team turn around this summer again. Second summer in a row that we've had a new team turnaround, and as predicting coming in, maybe sitting 5th or 6th or 7th maybe, and to come in and already be sort of sitting 4th, beating Aston Villa twice in 1 week, who we'd have said are probably our closest rivals, matching Chelsea pretty much in a game that wasn't a 3-1 loss. So yeah, we're pretty happy seeing commitment from the girls. It's a completely different game to the one we watched last season. So it'll be great to watch us progress. And I'm actually really looking forward to this game, because it's always such a tight game between Everton and United, and it'll really give us an idea of where we actually sit in our performance.
Yeah, don't we? Don't we know that from the last away trip we had up there last season? I'm sure we'll talk about last season's result. But John, come on, what's this about here? Nice little, started off nice. Welcome, Fiona. Yeah, as it should be, and then the Halloween duo at the top.
Whoa, Johnny K, what sort of this behaviour is unacceptable. We're not having this. You have the ability to kick him off.
Ellie's in the chat saying Emily Ramsey's doing brilliant at Everton. I'm sure we're going to get to her. Well, no, I'm not sure. We will get to Ramsey a little bit later on, because she is going to be obviously out for this game as well. But we will want to talk about her anyway. Shot not just once as well, twice in the space of a week or so. So not too bad. Not too bad there. Barry, come to you then from a United point of view. How are we feeling? Obviously, well, I know how we're feeling after the Durham game, but WSL wise, we couldn't get much better than where we are. We haven't conceded, scored. What's that? 10 goals, 11 goals now, joint top. Are you confident going into this?
100%. How can you not be confident? I feel like we've done everything we're supposed to do. No, it's too late, John. You burnt your bridge. Game over now, mate. You have to live with what you've done. I think it's really important that we give credit where credit's due. And we've had but just like Everton, we had a better season so far than the season before. But I still believe that if you take our first team and you put them up against anybody who didn't finish in the top 3 last season, we should be feeling confident. We think about the game against Everton last year. We were winning that one reasonably comfortably. It took that miscommunication between Thor and Mary for the goal to come about. So yeah, I feel like we've got all the tools that we need to be able to do that. We've got players coming back. So having Russo available is a great thing. And you just did, Yehuda. You've literally done it to yourself again. It's not a good thing, mate. But I think we've given ourselves a real opportunity. So can we bounce back from the game we've just had? Of course we can. We've done that before. We had the game against Aston Villa and we still went on to win the next one. If anything, if I was Everton now, I'd be a little bit worried about what the backlash is going to be, because I can't imagine we're going to want to go out there and perform in the same manner that we did against Durham. And people can try and tell me we were great. We weren't great. We were all right.
I think it's funny to hear, Barry, actually, that you say you're quite confident, because looking on Twitter, there's a lot out there of people who aren't confident with Skinner. I wonder, from sort of my point of view, how you can be sat at joint top of the table and all I'm seeing is a lot of people slating Skinner. I'm like, 1 minute, you've gone from being sitting fourth last season to now being joint at the table, and you've got no faith in your manager.
I've got to be honest with you. To me, Twitter at the moment is a little bit like if you were to have a Christmas dinner, but it's covered in like Brussels sprouts, and you've just got to dive through all that absolute pants to get through to the actual stuff that you really want. So yeah, that's I agree with you. I think it's mad, absolutely mad, that we can be in the position that we're in, and you've got people sitting there not feeling confident. But there you go. It's opinions for you. People have them, don't they?
Indeed, it is. To anyone who likes Brussels sprouts out there, Barry does like you as well, by the way.
I do like Brussels sprouts, I've got to be honest, but it was the best I could think of at the time. I was trying to keep it PG.
I will just address this, John. That is good news. Great to hear that. You're always active in the chat as well, so that is fantastic to see. Fiona, did you have a backup point to that? It's a good conversation point you raised, because me and Barry and a lot of people on this channel often think what's the outside perception of United and kind of the feeling around United at the moment. Is that how it's perceived? That
it just seems like a lot of ungratefulness, really. You've got some cracking players, and it just seems like an awful lot of complaining for a team that's doing really well and have progressed a lot since last season. And it just seems like you've got pictures of even players not looking too happy with their performance. But when they're not receiving that gratefulness from fans, what have they then got to be happy about?
It's a fair point raised, because I think we've had this discussion multiple times. We actually had this discussion last night, Baron, when you brought up about Marc Skinners, because obviously there was a lot of conversation, obviously after the Durham game, about rotation and things like that. And I know me and you had a bit of back and forth. What's going on in this chat? But I'll come back to some of these Brussels sprouts comments in a second. But in regards to, I'm assuming, Marty, you're talking about Skinner there and the way that we're playing. I agree to an extent, but like I said last night, we do play well in stages. We're just not doing it consistently over 90 minutes. But like I said, we can win every game to down in the season 1-0. We'd get in the Champions League. We'd all be sat here going, well, what a great manager. Yeah. Well, if we win every game now, we'd have won the league. But you know what I mean? We'd be sat here celebrating the fact that we've made it. So, like I said, I don't think personally you can look too much into it, but it is interesting to hear an opposition perspective and how it's perceived, because certainly at the moment there's a lot of back and forth going on, and Lansell, what's on Twitter, I don't think reflects at the game, in my opinion. I don't think that and even the people that are maybe doubting Skinner, I don't think they're not behind the team. They've obviously got their reasons for doubting the manager and the certain players, whatever. But yeah, it's a bit strange, I think. Personally, anyway, that's just my own opinion.
I think it's just strange when you see people going, well, 4-0 win's not good enough, and you're like, it's 4-0. What more do you want?
I mean, you just want to win, don't you? And I think, we were really gutted not to beat Leicester by more. It's hard not to agree that you would want to, if you're trying to be at the top of the table, to beat them by more. But let's not forget, Arsenal only beat Reading by 1 as well, and they're in exactly the same position as Leicester. They've got their relegation dogfight coming up this weekend themselves. So I find it amazing. But people have their reasons. Even if you think about the men's team, I'm sure there's been plenty of discussion about managers there. People liked Mourinho, people didn't. People liked Rangnick, people didn't. People liked Ten Hag, people didn't. I think people are entitled to their opinions. I just wish there was a little bit more meat on the bone sometimes, rather than it just being which is what we seem to get. It's madness. And you try and engage in these discussions, it doesn't really tend to end well, which is crazy. Which is why I prefer these ones, because we talk to people and actually have proper debates, which I think we enjoy. So it's really good in that respect, for sure.
100%. I'm going to come back to. In fact, I'll bring this question up now actually because it kind of links into. I want to talk about last season's 1-1 draw. We can obviously talk about the game at Old Trafford. That was slightly different circumstances at the time. But question for you, I guess Fiona, there. Which Everton are we meeting this time? Do you think they're better than last season?
Oh, miles better. I think we just even have to look to our pre-season friendly that we had, just to see the improvements there. That was a close friendly again, and I think we've even fused more as a team since then. So I think it's going to be a really close game. I mean, you've got players out that I'm sure you'd love to have on the pitch. Ona's one of them with her injury, and we've got a full squad except for, of course, Nicoline Sorensen, who's been out now with her ACL for 12 months. So we've got a full squad who we played our weaker squad with 8 changes the second time we played Villa this week, and we still walked away with the win at the end of the game. So that just shows the depth we've got in our squad this time round.
I did want to talk to you about the home games, because there's one thing I'm known for in this channel. It's trying to do a little bit of homework and seeing what's going on. So I thought I'd look at your 2 home games that you played in the league. So obviously you had the 1-0 against Leicester and the one against Chelsea as well, which you lost 3-1, which is no bad aches at all, really, when you think about it. But I was looking at some of the stats, and I found it interesting because in both of those games, both of your goals were own goals, weren't they, on that one?
Yeah.
And I say this not to be mean, but own goal does appear to be your top goal scorer at the minute, which is one of the others. It's a bit like us. They scored as many as Miles Tissier has for us. So we understand that. And it's shared out amongst a few of your players like Benison, Park, Finnegan, Lucy Graham, and I've forgotten her first name. Was it Aggie Beaver-Jones?
Aggie Beaver-Jones.
Yeah, so she was the other one. So you've done that. Looking at those 2 games, the one against Leicester seemed quite even. 8 shots each, 2 on target for you, 3 for them. You had more possession though, 68%. You seem to get quite a lot of passing, and your passing accuracy is quite good. A lot of fouls, 16 in the Leicester one, 12 in the other one. So clearly you're not scared of getting involved there. But your away form to me seems better than your home form. What do you think? What would you say to that?
I think we can't really consider the Leicester game as a true performance. Our referee for that game was actually Cheryl Foster, who was Liverpool's captain. We had a very unfair draw there with the refereeing. It was very biased throughout the game. I think that actually hindered our performance throughout. It was very clear there was tackles going on the pitch that we were like, hang on, what's going on here? Decisions were going the opposite way when the tackles were against us. And it got to the point where we were like, how has this even been allowed when she's captained our biggest rivals? And we're like, this is obvious bias. And I think even because there's such a big rivalry between Liverpool and Man United, should she be allowed to referee those games? And I think we've actually seen more issues with her, with what happened with Aston Villa and West Ham in that game, with the whole Sissoko situation. So I don't think we can take that game as a fair representation of our home performance.
Fair enough.
The Chelsea game, the penalty given was a clear dive. I think if you watch it back, it's blatantly obvious. And that was, again, poor refereeing. But I think our home performance has been different to our away performance. But the most recent game this Wednesday has actually shown that we can bring it at home as we do away. And it was very fairly matched with Aston Villa. And that goal that we scored wasn't an own goal, which means we can do it at home as we do away.
Indeed. I think... Well, go on,
so I was just going to say, because Skinner's obviously had his say on what he thinks about Everton. I think he's really impressed with the way you started. He thinks that you're going to give chances to attack them, to attack you, but that he is impressed with how you move the ball simply, progress up the pitch. You said that the Chelsea game was a great example. There were big moments for you in that game. Chelsea were just ruthless on the counter-attack, which we know. Trust me, we know. God, Chelsea, I hate them. Sorry, Sam. But he says we've got to be focused for the whole game. We've got to be at our very best to get the result. And he thinks on paper it's the hardest game we've played so far. I don't know. Conor, what do you reckon? Would you say that's the hardest game we're going to play so far?
It's hard to say because I think there's a very good point that I am going to tie this in. So it's this time last year, and we had the same problems. It was around this time when we played Everton away, and we got that 1-1 draw after the Spurs draw, after the Durham win on penalties last season. So it was around this time of year anyway. In terms of a hardest game, I'd say yes to this, and West Ham are definitely the two, because they're the two that we dropped 4 points last season. We drew away at West Ham last year, and we drew away at Everton. That's why this, for me, will be a barometer as to where we are. We've already beaten West Ham, which is better than last season, but then we lost to Durham, which is then a backward step from last season. So now this is kind of, let's see where we are. So I don't know into the toughest test, because I've seen bits of Everton, but they're definitely a more improved side. But West Ham also look decent. Everton are looking strong as well. It's hard this early on in the season because the table's not fully settled into how it's going to shape out yet. Until you get kind of 7, 8, 9 games in, you'll start to see the kind of table pull together. So I'm not too sure. I think, Fiona, it goes back to your point earlier in terms of, is this a better Everton side than last season? Obviously, you said yes. So if that's the case, then I'd say yes, it probably is our toughest test yet, because West Ham hung on, but I don't think they were exceptionally great going forward, but that could be credit to us, really, in the way that we set up defensively.
I think our problem is, well, people can see it as a strength, or a problem is, it's something I absolutely can't stand in football. Sorensen's brought his style of play to the game, and it's really clear when you watch the team. We play from the back a lot. Against Chelsea, that allows a lot of forward play from them. They can get into those spaces. They can intercept the ball. That creates their chances. I can't stand it. The minute that ball goes back, my stomach churns. It's just whether we can keep that ball moving forwards, and whether that allows the chances for Man United to slip in.
No, 100% on that one. I want to come to, in fact, I said I'm going to come back to it in a bit. I'm actually going to do it now, because why not? Question from Lanzar said, who are your main threats for us to look out for? I can probably name a couple of them, but I'll let you take the spotlight first, and we'll dive into this little section.
In terms of moving the ball, Katrin Vaya has performed exceptionally well. We rested her last game. Lucy Graham on that as that right wing back, she's moved positions, performing exceptionally well, moving that ball down. Shooting wise, Hannah Benson, Jess Park, they've settled beautifully well together. We've got Katja Snois, but we're just waiting for her to settle into that role, get a first goal, and then I think she'll be unstoppable. But Jess Park, the way she moves with that ball at her feet, is an incredible talent.
No, I was going to say that just before I give my little thoughts on this. Barry, TJ, I think he's more. I'm assuming that's your headlight you've got above you or something like that. You've got.
So, do you know, I'm sat on my breakfast bar today. I don't know. I sit in my little corner over there with all of this stuff behind me, but I'm not today because, as you know, I was sorting the washing out when you turned up. So I just thought I'll stay here rather than moving about. And I can't quite tell you what's going on, but whatever it is, I like it. I like the fact that I'm glittering today. It's great news.
It's better than Ahmed's. Do you remember his? It was a massive light above his head.
I'm just divine. That's all it is. Look at that, divine. It's like that bit in Ghost. Maybe I'm dying. That's what's happening. I'm just on my way up. Patrick Swayze. Where's Whoopi Goldberg when you need her? Huh?
I mean, Vincent's put his little tube. It looks like a guy from Quantum Leap.
No, I don't know who the guy from Quantum Leap is, but he had better be absolutely gorgeous, Vincent. Otherwise, there's going to be trouble.
Oh, dear me. Back to Lanzal's point, yeah, because I want to stick with Jess Park for a second, because that was the one player when I was writing down names. Obviously, Benison as well. In fact, I'll throw a double question at you, because I think Benison last season was the kind of player that you looked at and thought, did she fully settle? I guess was the question mark around her. Obviously, I know there was a little bit of issues towards the start of the season. Obviously, certain manager was around, and there was some things there. There was a lot of United fans saying we wish she'd have come to us and that kind of thing. There's a bit of talk there. Obviously, you mentioned Jess Park as well in terms of just, I guess, their influence on this team, because both of them young players. They're not exactly, you could argue they're experienced to a point, but they're not, you're kind of 26, 27, 28-year-old players that have had loads of WSL experience. So I guess just your influence and how impressed you've been with those players, that young players that have come in and kind of taken this team forward.
So I think people forget that Hannah Bedderson's 20. She's played for the Swedish national team now for a couple of years at the senior level, but she's 20 years old, and we forget that because of sort of her experience internationally. But she brings such a level of calm and skill. Sometimes her decision making doesn't have the experience of other players, but the way that she moves on the ball and her finish is excellent. Jess Park, again, another youngster. The way she moves, it looks like she's been playing football longer than Jill Scott played football. She's just got this like instinct about her, and her speed continues that through with her. Like, I don't know if there's many people who can outpace her at the moment. You wouldn't think it because she's about 4'2", but
there's definitely, because I'm pretty sure Jess Park played against us for City in that game at the Academy Stadium. I think someone can correct me if I'm wrong there. I just remember watching her and Hemp just absolutely destroy us out wide just every time, and it was so frustrating. I mean, there's a comment. Have I lost it? There's a comment. There we go. The comment from Lansdale. I remember saying Park has potential to reach Hemp level. I mean, that would be quite something.
I look forward to seeing the future of the Lionesses with Hemp and Park playing down the wings.
That is a scary prospect for other teams. Just before we move on and look at it, we'll flick it back from a United point of view in a second. But just a question on Park. Obviously, loanee at the moment. Do you think past this season you'd be able to try and get her for another year, or could you potentially try that as a permanent? Do you think she would? How are you kind of viewing that?
I'd like to. We've had comments from some of our other loanees saying how settled they are, how happy they are, and like how well they've settled into the team. I think it's still so early into the season for them to know what they want for the future and for us to make those decisions. Ultimately, it'd be those club decisions between City and Everton, and looking at where City are in the table at the moment and their current performance, whether she'd want to go back.
It's a fair point. It is a fair point. Weakening City is not a bad thing, though.
I wanted to ask, I know you said we'd come to it eventually anyway, so I feel like now's a good time to do so. Rambo.
We love Rambo.
On Rambo?
I'd keep Rambo in a heartbeat. We've got security in Courtney Brosnan. We did last season, and we wanted more of her last season. Having a second goalkeeper now that's pushing Courtney Brosnan to keep equality up and challenging weekend in, weekend out for that starting position just shows actually how much security we've got in our goalkeepers, and actually having two goalkeepers who could easily start both weekends and seeing both of them on the starting sheet and feeling actually I feel safe and secure with either one in goal, and especially after a performance on Wednesday, stopping those two penalties and her amazing performance in the first half, which kept us in the game.
Go on.
Sorry, just a message to you, Conor. You have a little read of that. Because obviously we were talking about, just before we came on air, about Rambo, and we were saying about how we've set her out on loan quite a few times now. But she's not broken in yet then. She's not your first team goalkeeper. Has she played just in the Conti Cup and that's all at the moment?
She's played at Leicester. I think she played our Leicester game. She has played one other game for us. So she has played twice.
Yeah, she played Leicester.
Yeah. And she made some cracking saves in that as well. So she is pushing for those WSL starts as well, which just shows the quality that she's got and the faith that Brian Sorensen has in her.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Conor now.
I thought you had another question off the back of that. No worries. Yeah, a couple of comments there. Rambo's a difficult one, so can't keep loaning her out. Literally exactly what we were saying backstage before we came on. This is her fourth loan now. We can't really keep, and she's not going to want that either, because if you keep getting loaned out, it's very clear that you're not wanted enough by your parent club at that point.
Why do you say that? If she's 21 and she's been loaned out 4 times, that means she's been loaned out since she was 17. It's not like she's being loaned out and she's 25 in the peak of her career and having been pushed out of the club. it's very, you would imagine that the discussions behind the scenes are, we really rate you. We think you've got a great future. You're just not ready for the first team yet. So we want to make sure that you are. And we constantly talk about this gap between the development squad and the first squad, and how the development squad can't play in the first team so much because that gap is so wide and they need that experience. You could argue that sending them out to WSL clubs and doing things like that is giving them the opportunity to get games that they're otherwise not going to get for us, which long term could only help us. And if she knows that in advance and she knows that's why we're doing it, you'd like to think that is a discussion that's happening. And if so, that would be a positive thing, right?
But then you've sent her out on loan again and taken Sophie Bagley from a team that wasn't doing very well and are playing her. Sophie Bagley didn't have the best record when she signed for United at the start of this season. Whereas you've had someone who's been out on loan and actually performed well on loan as well.
I think Beggars did well in the Conti Cup last year when she played for us. We made it to semi-finals, didn't we? So, we didn't do too bad at all with Baggers in goal. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Definitely an interesting one.
It's certainly a debate, and I'm going to come back to this right at the end because as Barry has asked, and we do love a good poll, so I'm going to put a little poll in the chat just talking about number twos. Talk about number twos for next season. I've put Bagley and Ramsey's name on there. Vote away.
Have you done both? Have you done it already?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
You'll be lucky if you get Rambo back. I'll chain it to Walton Park.
This is outrageous. I think I'd also like to point out at this point as well that Fiona and I aren't related, even though the end of our Twitter handle is exactly the same here. This is entirely coincidental.
There we go. A lot of chat about Mary as well. Yeah, I'd say she's got a few more years yet anyway. But we'll come back to that poll towards the end. And we'll see what the results of that are. And we have got a few more Everton things to cover as well. But Barry, I want to come back to you, and obviously you have your say on this as well. From United point of view, the team news is out. Skinner's given his updates on injuries and things like that. Honor is out. Russo and Clinton potentially or in contention for the game. There was a question from Lanzel, I think a bit further on. I'll have to see if I can find it while you're talking about. Oh no, it's right there. I found it. Is Russo? If Russo is fit to be on the bench, does she start? If she doesn't start, who would you have? I think I'll go for Williams. So Barry, comes to you first. How are you kind of feeling on that front?
Well, I feel like you start with your best side, and I feel you start with Russo. If genuinely fit enough to play, then we start. If she's not that fit and they want to ease her in, as they have done before, they did that last year, then obviously you stick her on the bench for a little bit and bring her on if need be. But we don't have the luxury at this point in time of messing about. We've got to make sure we make the right decisions. And I feel like we've made the wrong decisions twice in terms of wholesale changes. So to be honest with you, I think if we just return back to our usual first 11, I know that we can't have Honor. The two changes should be whether it's Honor or Russo playing, and that should be about it. I think as long as you've still got Garcia playing, as long as you've still got Galton playing and Toon, and those are your three, the person that plays in front of them really is much for muchness. Whether it's Russo who starts, whether it's Paris, whether it's Leon, whether it's Williams, there's 4 players there that you could choose from. And that's the whole point of having that depth, because they'll be supported by 3 players who've been performing really well so far. You put Katie Zellem in. I still think you go with Hayley Ladd along your side and leave Stanny and Moore as impact players rather than anything. And then for me, when it comes to Honor, you've got to put, in my eyes, MLT out at right back, and you go Tunkara, Turner, and Blundell left back with Mary Earps in goal. And if you do that, then it's not really a discussion about Alessia Russo, and I'm sure that is what he will do. But listen, we've missed her. There's no doubt about that. And the problem is that she scored a goal, then she got injured. The idea was that she was supposed to score a goal, and that was supposed to kick off her running in the WSL. And now that she hasn't had that, she had that break. Now she's got to get that first goal all over again to try and get off on a bit of a run. So yeah, I think we've got to get her on there and get her firing, because I feel like she is going to be. Of course he does. He's not a silly boy, Lanzel. He knows when the truth is being spoken. That's what we need to do. Thor is not a right back. I said this before. She played really well at left back against Durham. but it was Durham. I just think we need to go. We know is our best, and MLT is a born right back, and Thor is not. If she's got a play, stick her centre back, but please don't put her at full back again. I just don't feel like it's her level.
Yeah, I was speaking to someone within the Norwegian side the other day after. No, it was yesterday actually. After the Durham game, and I was saying, obviously Maria was at right back again, and they just straight up just said why, like not at this stage in kind of her career. Maybe 6-7 years ago, maybe, but not now. So
the annoying thing is, though, Conor, I could live with it if we didn't have another recognised right back or another recognised fullback, because we've done it before. Wes Brown used to throw out at right back sometimes if we needed to, or he would come in at centre back. These are things that happen in football. Sometimes players have to play out of position. I get that, but when you've got someone who you bought who was a right back, it's crazy to me. I don't understand why you would do that. That's like making macaroni cheese and thinking to yourself, I haven't got any cheese. So rather than using that, I'll use that squirty stuff that comes in, It's like, why are you doing that, mate? Just get some proper cheese, because the cheese is in the fridge. You just didn't look behind the bloody lettuce, did you? That sort of thing, really. Do you know what I mean? It's not hard.
Have you got food on your mind tonight, Barry?
I was going to say,
Marty, if you're watching, that's how you do a cheese analogy, right?
I don't know how you come up with these. You just so quick off the mark with some of these.
It's luck, Conor. It's luck, because I go for it and then I just hope that whatever I'm saying makes sense.
Thinking about Russo in terms of her injury, coming from sort of a medical background and sports psychology background, it's probably best for her if she is injured to play, but I don't think I'd start her. She should probably be an impact player. If I was looking at it for the impact and to build her confidence, probably bring her on later in the game where she could probably make the most impact and score those goals that would probably make the difference.
How do you look at United from an opposition point of view coming into this, that if Russo is missing, obviously it will either be Leon, Thomas, Paris down the middle, someone like that comes in, Garcia and Goldson on the right. Do you think, obviously it weakens us to a point because Russo is an exceptional player. Are you more confident if she's not playing, or do you just think the players that can come in are also as good, that can do a job there as well?
I'm a little bit more confident if she's not playing, because I was there for most of those Euro goals, and I know what she's capable of. And personally, I don't rate Paris. So if she comes in as a replacement, I don't rate her. I thought she had an appalling season at Arsenal. I don't rate her when she plays for England. And I don't think she can bring much more to United. She has the odd successful goal, but I don't see it. And she used to play for Everton. She used to play for Everton, but I do not see the talent there.
Well, you don't have to worry. She doesn't play for you. It's all right.
So if she starts, I'll feel a little bit more relaxed.
It's a fair. We're all allowed our different opinions on it. Like I said, I've not been massively blown away by her so far. She scored a good goal at Villa. Although that was a great strike. She obviously scored again.
Very good goal.
Against Leicester. I think only time will tell with her. Her Arsenal time, when I spoke to a lot of Arsenal fans, they said it just was never going to work in that system there. But it's interesting you say that there's a few players that come in. I actually don't know who, if it's not going to be Russo, who starts down the middle, because we've seen so many different variants of players starting down the middle. It could be Leon, it could be Thomas, it could be Paris, it could be a false nine. Who knows what it's going to be?
The players that I always see as a threat when we play United are Galton, Thomas, Ona, but she's out, and oh goodness, what's her name? And from what I've seen so far this season, Garcia.
It's a fair shout. She's definitely had a good start. She had a great link up with Honor as well. Obviously, it'll be interesting to see actually how well Garcia plays without Honor on that side. Yeah,
that'll be interesting,
because that's what we're now going to see. Because I imagine Garcia will come back in. She didn't come on against Durham. Neither did Galton or Toon. So I imagine that was purely because of this weekend in mind. Just very quickly, this is kind of on your level, Barry. I know what you're trying to say, Joseph. I still have my doubts about Marc Skinner and how he lines up the team. The fact you've put Mac Skinner, it's almost like you've got Barry's mac and cheese.
Yeah.
Got it on your mind, but
it's outrageous. Either that or I think she's Scottish.
I understand what you're trying to say. Ian's,
They
I think that's a
played too
question
slow.
for
I don't
you.
think they have played too slow. I don't agree with that. I don't see that we played too slow. Who puts cheese in the salad drawer in the fridge? No one, you can't find the cheese. That was the problem. You've got to look, though. As my mum would say, it's not just going to jump out and go, hello, here I am. You've got to look for things, Ian. Goodness me. That one that you just had about the playing too slow, I don't agree with that. I just don't. I feel like me and Joseph are not on the same page these last few days. I mean, if you're talking about the Durham game, all right, it wasn't great, and the Leicester game was not good. You know, there's no getting away from that. The way that we ended that was not as good as it should have been. But I don't agree that we played too slow in general over the whole season. I think, as you said, in patches we play quite well. We've just had some patches where we don't maintain that level, and that's not unusual. Nobody keeps the same level all the way through a game. It doesn't happen.
I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't agree with that either, Vincent, because she absolutely doesn't. She doesn't run away after they run straight to the coach, sign some autographs. Why does she need to sign some autographs? I mean, I'm not being funny. The way that some of the fan base treated Nikita Paris before she even got here, I'm surprised that she even speaks to any of them, to be honest with you. It was absolutely outrageous the way some people spoke about her. So, I think actually if it's not about her wanting to impress the United fans. I think it's just about the United fans need to start impressing her.
Indeed. There's a few things there. There's a lot of points we've just covered in the last kind of 5-10 minutes or so. You kind of covered my next question, Barry, in terms of how big of a miss Honor's going to be as well. Will it be Maya at fullback or will it be Maria that goes there?
Because lots of people went on about the Honor thing. There was somebody on Twitter, that absolute delightful place, who said that that's the main thing that we're missing. And I don't know. Would you see Honor as one of our main dangers there, Fiona, when you were thinking about people that were really going to affect your team? Were you thinking as Honor Batcher as being one of the main reasons or the main problems that you were going to have to face?
Yeah. From her play last season, she's all over that pitch. She makes a mark up and down that pitch. Her skill level, speed, and not just her foresight into passes as well. She can see that pass before anyone else, really. She has that sort of sight that I wouldn't say as good as, because I don't think anybody has the sight of Kira Walsh, but getting towards that level. And I think that's something that's quite threatening. As a fan, we see the match differently to the way the players do. So as fans, we can often see some of the passes that they don't. And if she's able to spot some of the passes we see and the players haven't spotted them, it's that danger risk and those spaces.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because I think I tweeted after the Leicester game that Honor for me is... I said this all last season as well, that we don't create half as many attacks with her out of the team, purely because Skinner's system relies on fullbacks pushing so far forward, and that's where the width comes from. And when you don't have attacking fullbacks, we have Maria, and I know Maya can get up and down the line. I know we won't talk about the Durham game in particular, but we've had different-ish fullbacks in the last few weeks. It's not felt the same as when you have Honor and Hannah, and I think it's been very noticeable. And you've not had the passing range from Maya at centre-back when she goes to full-back as well. So there's some issues there. We've got quite a few questions to get through, so I will just move it on very slightly. I want to just a question, I guess, for Fiona and to Barry as well, because we didn't cover this last night on last night's show, but I want to get both your thoughts on this. Obviously, it's all come out. We've all seen it. Just sticking with Russo very, very briefly, I just wanted to cover it. The news, the interest from Leon. I think if you know, you know that this is not new interest. This is not just suddenly come out of the woodwork. They've been interested for a while. But Fiona, I want to get your thoughts first, and then Barry as well, because like I said, we were going to touch on this last night, but we just run out of a little bit of time. Fiona, what do you think from looking at United? How do United resolve this and keep Russo, I guess, at United? Obviously, there's a couple of things there with contracts and things like that, if details that are not public. But how do you see that situation? Do you think United need to keep her, firstly?
I think you've got some talented players there. I think it just comes down to developing that talent that if you can get the best out of that talent to replace Russo consistently. I don't understand why Leon would try and get her for the January window when she's a free agent in the summer. Seems like a complete waste of their money. But in terms of Russo in her own career development, if I was her, I'd be pushing to go to Lyon. She'd be playing consistent Champions League football. Well, they're out of it now, I think, based on their last performance. But to play for a club like Lyon, we see a lot of players do it and then they end up coming back to the WSL. But for that development for her own career, I think it'd be silly for her not to go.
And Barry, your thoughts on this? What do we do to resolve this? This is going to go on all for the next few months.
Well, it is. I'll tell you what we'll do is, rather than me just going off on one, let's do this. So TJ's put 3 things up. So the first thing he said with regards to Alessia leaving, the first thing is the coach and staff keeping her happy. And I believe 100% this is already happening. There is no part of Alessia Russo that stepped out saying she wants to leave the football club. I haven't seen anything from her. There's nothing as she's playing on the pitch that shows you that Alessia's thinking of anything other than doing well for Manchester United while she's here. So is she happy at the club? 100%. I don't see any part of her that is unhappy being at the club. I mean, her best friend plays, for goodness sake. She's happy. So number 1, tick. That's not a problem whatsoever. This one could be another tricky one. Money for the Glazers and the board. Money's always going to be important, but I don't think Alessia Russo is somebody who's going out there specifically for the money. Do I think she probably wants a bit more than she's been getting after the way she played at the Euros? Probably so. Do I think she deserves it? Absolutely. But have the club with it? Who knows? Nobody knows what's being said about there. Nobody's got any clue as to what money's been offered and whether or not that's part of the problem. So even if you do offer it, it's up to the player and their representatives and all of the people that are involved in that, the club and the club's representatives, to come up with something that everybody agrees on. And it's not always necessarily Russo or the club that's, to blame. It depends. There's lots of different things. And I think it's this one. This is the one that comes down to me. And this is the key. The other 2, I think, are irrelevant. I think the money's there. And I think we'd be mad to let her go in that respect. This is the one for me. Players' ambition. If she has the ambition to play in the Champions League, then there is no doubt in my mind that there is a part of her that's sitting there saying, let's see how we get on this year. We finished 3 years on the trot. And she's been there for pretty much all that time. So she is aware that if we're going to get Champions League, we need to make that next step. If she's been listening to Marc, you'd like to think she could have signed a deal at the beginning of the year and said, I'll commit my future to United. I'm happy to do that. But if we don't make Champions League, I'd like to be sold the next year or something like that, just so there's some money involved. That would have been a nice thing to see. That's what we talk about in the men's game quite a lot. And then the offers from the other teams. Is Lyon really an attractive proposition? It is in terms of playing Champions League football. It is in terms of them being a good team. But I still think the WSL is up there as one of the best leagues in Europe. So I don't think she needs to leave for any reason other than Champions League football. From what I'm aware, and I've always said this, I'm not great when it comes to football from elsewhere around the globe when it comes to the women's game. But are there any other English players that play at Lyon? I don't know. Is there anyone who she would be particularly friendly with or who she knows that's over there?
Not currently, I don't believe.
So there's not really anything there that's going to pull her over. So it's all down to me, to the Champions League. That's the only thing that I think could be the reason she would want to go anywhere else.
Yeah, 100%. And to be fair, with the amount of the rate that players are getting injured at Lyon, I wouldn't trust their training regime at the moment. So I wouldn't want to be going anywhere near it. And like Fiona said, that they might be out of the Champions League as it is if they don't start getting some wins in that group.
Anyway, we've got the best Lyon.
I just think it'd be silly for her to go in January when she's got the rest of the season here to play and the possibility of Champions League at United.
100% she won't go. Do you think we're a selling club?
No. You've got quite good player retention, and you signed Grace this summer. And I actually thought you were quite a good buying club. I thought one of our other players from Everton that left this summer was actually going to end up at United. I was shocked when she went to a different club. I'm not going to mention who, but I thought she was going to end up at United. You ended up with just Grace Clinton. But, I mean, I'd say just Grace
Very
Clinton.
pleased with her.
She's a cracking little player. And I didn't want to lose Gracie.
Definitely one to keep an eye on in the next few weeks, that's for sure, with a player like Grace. There's been a lot of comments on this recent one. I just want to get to a couple of them before we bring it back to Sunday's game for the last little section before we look to wrap this up. Lanza, I think you're bang on. I think there's a few players looking at the end of the season Champions League, and why shouldn't they? I think it's easier, I guess, for some of the younger players because they've still got years, ahead of them. But I think for some of the older players, they're probably looking at it going, look, I'm getting towards the end of my career now. I want to play Champions League, and if we don't get it again, then I wouldn't blame them if that's what they want. But at the same time, they're here now. They've got to get us into that spot. So we'll see on that one.
I wouldn't blame any player for wanting to do that if the opportunity is there. Your career is short.
Indeed. Not letting Russo leave. No, 100%. I'm sure that conversation's going on. But all I'll say is don't underestimate the impact of having the Lionesses squad in and around Russo as well. Other WSL players in Russo's ear, as what it happened with Jackie over the summer. So
I'm not sure about that. This Tooney's not letting Russo leave. I saw something that she put out there about the things that she'd take on with her to a desert island. And I was thinking the third one would be Lessie, and she chose a bloody CD player with CDs over Russo. So she's taken a football. I think the other one was Joe. And then, no Russo. So that's outrageous behaviour. If I was Russo, I'd leave just for that. I thought you were my best mate.
Well, I think at camp she's probably got Alex Greenwood in her ear going, don't go to Leon, don't go to Leon, don't go to Leon, don't go to Leon. Because from what I heard, she did not have a good experience in France.
Indeed. It's more it's more the two other WSL clubs I'll be looking at. There's definitely some other interest there. But we shall glance over that one. There's quite a few other comments. Well, I'll bring up just this one finally on this one. If we don't get Champions League this season, there's a risk of losing keep. Yeah. I think we're going to have a few players leave regardless of whether we get Champions League or not anyway, because that's just what happens. You're going to see a few players leave anyway, but I think we will see a few more go if we don't get Champions League.
And it's like Skinner said about that, is that actually there's a certain level of play you can get without being in the Champions League. You need to be in that in order to unlock, players that have that the ambition that we're talking about.
Exactly. And Ian just there saying when I saw Grace into 100%. From what we saw on TV as well, it looked great as well. I'll leave the poll up for a little bit longer, although I don't think it's going to make too much difference on the poll because Rams is way out in front. So if there's some Bagley fans in the comment, make sure you vote for her because she's falling quite far behind in this kind of who should be our number 2 next season role. Maybe. I don't think too much into that though. Quick question for yourself, Fiona. Any injuries of note from an Everton point of view? Anyone that's out? Obviously, we know Rams is out from loan purposes, but is there anyone out?
We had our press conference today, and the only players that are out are Sorensen, as expected. She is back in training now, full time with the squad, but not yet ready to play matches. And of course, Rambo can't play, being a home squad. So we've got a full fit team.
That's good from your point of view then. But okay, looking at it from an Everton point of view, looking at United, we've spoken about kind of our strengths and things like that. What if you're looking at United? How are you going to beat us? So we'll talk about it from a United point of view in a second. But looking at it from Everton point, how are you going to beat us? Where do you look and go? That's a weak link in kind of United's armour that you can get at.
I think at the moment your front line is wobbly. You've not got assured players at the front. With your injuries, with owner out, Leslie still being questioned, that sort of unsurety about your starting 11 gives us those weak links to sort of break you down. We'll probably play quite a secured starting 11 that our players know quite well. We have a very sort of solid back line at the moment that are working really well together and putting up a really good defence.
It's a fair point, and I guess Barry, from a United point of view, last season we spoke about this 1-1 draw last season. All we want. How do we change that this season? What do you think is different this season about us that we can look at Everton and go, we're actually going? Well, to be fair, we went to Everton last season and won anyway in the Conti Cup, so we can do it in recent times. In the league,
goal was offside.
We're going to get into this, are we? Which one are you talking about? The first, it was a free kick, wasn't it, from Zellum? I think the first one.
Yeah, that wasn't a foul.
Thomas scored. I think it was Thomas.
But the 1-1 draw, that goal was offside.
I can't even remember who scored in that 1-1 draw.
Was it Galton?
It was Tooney for us, and McGill for them.
Super Simone McGill.
And it was the easiest goal she'll ever score. Easiest goal she'll ever score. Tapped in from about 6 yards out. It's gone through Mary Earps' legs because it's come off a Thor. So, I think it's quite important that we just start strong. It's the exact thing I told us to do against Leicester that we then didn't go and do. You've got to start strong. I don't see Everton as being a side that's going to go 5-4-1 and try and stick everybody behind the ball and just be grateful if they can get a point. I feel like Everton are going to want to try and get something that will play to our advantage. If Everton sit back, we're going to have to try and find a way to get through them. And my argument to that would be the way to do that would be to stick Alessia Russo up front and just whack that ball up to her so that she can nod the ball in because she's absolutely dangerous in the air. Failing that, give it to her feet, she'll back heel it in. She can make anything happen. She really wants to. Let's be clear. But yeah, I do think we're going to have to, we need that width. And that's why we can't have Thor out on the right-hand side. We need these fullbacks bombing on, overlapping, creating diversions, because it just adds to the attack. If you know that the fullbacks aren't coming up, then you know that if the ball goes to Paris or to Galton, you know already what's going to happen. Unless they're either cutting inside or they're going to try and beat you or they're going to try and knock the ball back to Thor or to Blundell or whoever it is who's there. And when you knock it back, you're not really doing too much in the final third. I understand why they do it sometimes in defence to try and bring the attack on. Leicester weren't doing that. I think Everton are a lot more likely to come forward and to try and score, especially at home in front of a sellout crowd. So well done, you lot. It's nice to see some people turning up at WHP.
Every home game's been sold out so far except our midweek Conti Cup game. So, but you kind of expect that from a midweek game.
So I think that's the big thing. We've just got to attack. And honestly, if we attack any team, we're going to cause trouble. We really are. The teams where you need to worry about tactics to the most part, I think, your Arsenal, your City, and your Chelsea. Everybody else, if we have any desire to be a top three side, we need them to be adjusting their game for how we play. We shouldn't be adjusting our game for how these other teams play. That's not what Chelsea do. Chelsea don't sit there and go, oh, we've got Everton coming or we've got Villa coming. We best have a little think about what we can do. But just play. Football's not hard. The idea is the same. Stick it in that big goal at the end. And if you have enough shots on target, you're going to do it. So I would do. And I would just like to say, don't we all, Liam? Don't we all?
I was going to say, if this was flipped around, I'd be sat here saying that everything's offside and everything else because I'm not taking any slander against United either. So,
we've not had a draw yet in the WSL in any game, and I feel this could be the first draw of the WSL.
Ooh.
That's an interesting point. I'm going to come back to you in just a second on your score prediction. But yeah, I think from my point of view, we have to turn this into a win. If we're serious about going on for the top three this season, we have to turn this into win. We can't go down the road again of dropping points, drawing and things like that. Because everyone's saying how bad City look. I don't think City look that bad. I've got to be honest. But Villa game aside, they look a good side. They're not as bad as people are making them out to be. So they're not going to be as far away, I don't think. And then we've got Chelsea next week as well. So if we need to make sure we get this win under our belt, and then with Chelsea the week after, because you can imagine what it's going to be like if we don't win this weekend and don't beat Chelsea. That momentum that we had, this top of the league that we've been talking about, it's going to be falling away, and we could be dropping down to 5th, 6th, 7th, so on. So we don't want to see that.
Well, this is it. And Arsenal have got a bit of a tough game. They're going to be up against West Ham. We need to make the most of it. Is the simple and honest answer to that. We need to make the most of what we're doing. We could be top of the league again at the end of this game if we play well. But equally, if we don't, then Everton are going to be on the exact same number of points as us. And all of a sudden, there's a little bit more. Chelsea could be on the same amount of points as us as well then with the old hand problem. So yeah, we've got to do well. We've got to come away with 3 points. I'm afraid is the simplicity of it all.
Indeed, right. I'll come to you, Fiona, first, and before we wrap this up, what's your score prediction and any goal scorers if you want to name those as well?
I hate score predictions, but I think it's going to be 1-1, Lucy Graham and Garcia.
Barry?
I think it's probably a good job you're not in our predictions league if you don't like score predictions. For which I'd like to say, if you haven't yet sent your predictions in, what are you waiting for? It's a Friday night and they should be in by now. So pull yourself together and make sure they're sent in, especially if your name's Conner Roberts.
Oh, yeah.
It's outrageous. I've texted you and everything. You still haven't put them in there. It's outrageous behaviour, Conner. And you should really be ashamed of yourself. Honestly, lead by example. All right. But yeah. I think I put down 3-0. I think was what I put in the predictions league. I don't think Everton are going to rate Mary Earps' confidence. I don't believe that. Although they could well. But my confidence is taking me 3-0. And as you know, I'm useless at doing goal scorers. So I'm just going to say a Maria Thorisdottir hat-trick.
You never know.
I'm never going to be right on the goal scorers because I never get it right. I don't think I've ever done it. You need Charlie for that sort of level of predicting. That's ultra elite level. I was really going to go it maybe 2-1. Hopefully Russo will get on the score sheet, and it would be ideal if Clinton came on and won as well.
I'm just a massive Lucy Graham fan, so she'll always be my lucky option.
All right, well I'll tell you what then. And Russo and a Lucy Graham own goal. How's that? And then everybody's happy.
I'm off Barry's career. I don't think I was ever on it, to be honest. but there we are.
I don't do Christmas cards. They just get thrown away.
Galton and Garcia from Yehuda. Yeah, the thing is, I'll say something now. My thing on the predictions league will be completely different. So I actually think we will concede because I just think with Park, Bennett and so on, I think they've got enough there, and we've played. I know Everton have as well, but we've obviously this is the third away game in a week. I think that we'll start to see that. We can see the 2 against Durham, so I think we'll win 3-1. I'm just going to say Park just because I think she's quality from an Everton point of view. Toon, Galton, Garcia. Yeah, I don't think to look too much outside of that. So yeah, I will go for a 3-1 win there. Just before we wrap up, I will just bring that poll back up if I can find it. Can anyone see the poll in the chat, by the way? I can't see it. I had this issue. Oh, no, I can see it now. So we've got Ramsey at 80% and Bagley at 20%.
And how many people voted?
That's from a vote of 22. I can see it at the moment.
That's pretty comprehensive. I mean, it's by no means a snapshot of the entire fan base, but I do think that just about says it all. I think it's sad, but we've conceded 3 goals with Baggies in the Conti Cup against teams that we really would have expected to have done better. She was brilliant in the penalties against, and then not so great in the penalties against Durham. So I don't know, but yeah, I think Rambo has probably earned a shot as being number 2 if we were to get her back.
I think so. There's just one final question for yourself, Fiona, just if you want to answer that very quickly. Is Gio a starter yet for Everton?
No, we're not entirely sure what's going on there. There was some questions about her fitness coming in. And the last update we got on that is that she's not quite full 90 minutes fit. I think she's more of an impact player at the moment with speed she carries and the fresh legs. So bringing her on in the second half with that freshness while everybody else is getting a little bit fatigued is probably working the best for us currently.
That's fair enough. She looks a quality player, though. If you can get her kind of firing as well, that'll be quite something. We will wrap it up there. Fiona, thanks very much for coming on. If people if United fans want to gloat on Sunday after the game, where can people find your Twitter handle and things like that?
I sit directly on the halfway line. There's some stairs by the halfway line and I sit to the left of them. You can find me there or at the merchandise stand. We're normally by where the face painters are. We sell songbooks and custom beer mats for all the players before the game and at half time. So I'll be around there.
We've actually got a real life location of you there. Is that your Twitter handle there as well? I think it is.
Yeah, that's my Twitter.
On screen as well. So make sure you're following Fiona. We will be back. We are going to be back on Sunday because me and Barry can't make it up there, unfortunately. So we will be doing a watch along instead. So we'll be back on Sunday for that. So if you are not going to the game, tune in for that. You know what our watch alongs are like from the summer. It can be a little bit chaotic.
No Charlie though, because Charlie's going to be at the game, and her exact words to me were, "Does that mean I've got to do the vlog?" I'm like, "Yes, Charlie, it does." So Charlie's actually going to do some work this weekend, so that'll be great.
Yeah, so make sure you check that out. So we'll be back on Sunday. Make sure you check, and obviously we'll be back for the match reaction on next Monday. There will be a special on Tuesday as well. We're going to be busy next week. Special next Tuesday, back Wednesday, and so on as we lead up to the Chelsea game.
Keep your eyes on the Twitter, guys. We've got it all going on. It's all happening.
Indeed. Thanks to everyone in the comments. Make sure you're liking and subscribing, and we shall see you all very soon.